As I say, I've worked in Colchester, and this is going to tell you a little bit about chaplaincy and prayer spaces. And that's based to a large extent on our experience of chaplaincy and prayer spaces in Colchester. You may have other experiences that you could bring to this, other suggestions, other ideas. So this isn't the final word, but it might be a first word for some of us about what chaplaincy in education and prayer spaces can look like. Alongside the phenomenal growth of prayer spaces in the last 4 or 5 years, you saw the graph earlier, has been in parallel a phenomenal growth of chaplaincy in education, and particularly lay chaplaincy in state schools. Chaplaincies existed in the private and the independent sector and in the church sector for quite a while. It's been bubbling along, doing well. But there's been an explosion of interest in chaplaincy in education and schools, recognising the value of having a chaplain in their school. So what does chaplaincy look like, and how can we begin to sort of define it or think about it? We have a very simple kind of overview description that we use in Colchester, which is this: pastoral support and spiritual development. So what is chaplaincy? It's pastoral support and spiritual development. I believe it's both and, not one or the other. I think it's possible to engage with schools very effectively and meaningfully and helpfully in the level of pastoral support and mentoring. You can do that, and that's a good thing, but I don't think that's chaplaincy. I think chaplaincy brings another dimension as well, which we call the spiritual development one. As Nicola will have reminded us, Ofsted is keen on spiritual development. This is part of the subsidiary guidance which came out only last year about inspection in schools and SMSC. An important aspect of the overall effectiveness judgment is a consideration of how well the school contributes to the promotion of pupils' spiritual, moral, social and cultural development. That was the thing that Nicola was saying. If they fail on this, they won't get an outstanding. It's that important. And this subsidiary guidance in 2012 reinforced that. So rather than some might imagine that the involvement of spirituality in education might be on the wane because we're a more secular society now. In education, quite the reverse. Spirituality has a high profile. We recognise, and education recognises, that qualifications alone, grades and assessments alone, don't produce whole, well-rounded young people. There's something vital missing. And statements like this, and just our own recognition, the recognition of staff, would point to the fact there's something important missing, and that's about bringing up young people as whole people who are able to engage with more than just intellect and ideas, but with their lifestyle and experiences and what we would recognise as spirituality. So what I'm going to do is go over a brief overview of one way of looking at what chaplaincy is, and then later on, towards the end, we'll talk about how that connects with prayer spaces. Because I suspect that most of you are fairly familiar with what prayer spaces are, but maybe less familiar with chaplaincy, maybe. So, first definition, pastoral. I think we can understand what pastoral is because we come from churches, we know what pastoral support looks like. But the great thing about this is schools know what pastoral is as well. We're talking the same language. So pastoral support for students. In general, that will be less than counselling. Even if you have a counselling qualification, our experience is that there's a big gap in provision between going to see the school counsellor, for which you might have to wait 12 weeks because they're booked up and they're only in half a day a week, or having a chat to your teacher who already has 120% of things to do and doesn't really have that kind of time, and anyway, they're your teacher. And in between that gap is a massive gulf. And many young people just need somebody to talk to, a trusted adult who can bring some wisdom and reflection into the situation they're facing in a fairly easygoing way. And so what we found is that 20 minutes, meeting with a member of our team for 20 minutes once a week, is sufficient. And we've had young people who've turned up and they've met with one of our chaplains, and they've had a bit of a conversation, and they've kind of been helped a bit, and then they've gone away, and then the next week they've turned up and they said, actually, I think it's all okay now. It's all right. And let's just help them through that, whatever it was. It's just help them process what was going on in their head, and now it's okay. Isn't that great? And so it can be as simple as that, or it could be that actually it's helpful for that person to continue to meet with the chaplain. But it's on a fairly informal basis, although it might be organised, and often it's best is, organised through the pastoral care department of the school, the pastoral support department of the school. So chaplaincy, partly pastoral. We understand that, schools understand that. Fantastic, we connect on that. The spiritual. We've already talked about spiritual development. Again, schools recognise spiritual development is important. That's now kind of in statute, in the Ofsted guidance, in what schools are expected to provide. We know that we can provide that. We can help young people to think spiritually. We are equipped to do that. As this teacher said, there are clear benefits to students having someone who is not part of the school to talk to and reflect on spiritual and personal issues. Being external adds to the impact of the work. So that, again, it's this thing that having somebody coming in from outside who's not a teacher, who doesn't have to carry authority, who doesn't have to mark your work at the end of the week, but isn't also a counsellor, that somebody outside who can have those spiritual conversations with young people is a real asset. So chaplaincy, we can do pastoral, we can do spiritual. Here's another one. It's missional. This guy Bosch, in a book called Transforming Mission, said this: "From the beginning, the missionary message of the church incarnated itself in the life and world of those around it. It is therefore inherently contextual and continually to be renewed and reconceived." And being a chaplain in a school is a way of renewing and reconceiving what being missional is all about. Now, missional is principally about being sent. The term mission isn't just used in terms of Christians who go and put up tents and sing songs and invite people to become Christians. It's also used. You could talk about a diplomatic mission, or a peace mission, So it's a word that the world is used to. But when it comes to Christians, the world is possibly justifiably slightly sceptical, right? It's the agenda that they fear the most, and maybe rightly so. Say some things have happened in the past which have closed schools to Christian involvement. But I think the essence of missional for us as chaplains working in schools is that we are sent, and that means we belong to a community outside of the school or college that still has brings a connection into the school or college. We come from a church or from a group of local churches represented by an organisation. So we come in with a purpose. So there's some intentionality about it. It's not just about kind of hanging around and waiting for people to talk to us about God. That could seem a bit slack or lazy or something. Obviously, sometimes there's a moment for that. But in general, being missional means we are intentional about our presence in the school. I think that helps the school, because they want to know why we're there. And if they know that we're there because we come from the churches to support the school, to support the education of young people, and to support the school in delivering and enhancing areas of school life and of young people's life that they can't more easily manage because of assessment and all the rest of it, then that is a blessing to the school. So we are missional in the sense of being a blessing to the school, and that means understanding the school context. Here's a few more. Liturgical. How many of you fancy being liturgical? Oh, yes, see Mark, he works in Anglican, so he'll love all that. All that means is, all that is just a bit of liturgy sometimes is a good thing. Sometimes, like there's a picture here, this is a Christmas event that went on in the Sixth Form College in Colchester. And so the member of our team who's the chaplain there, she was asked to speak at it. On another occasion, she'd been invited. It had happened in a church. They'd done the college carol thing in a church, and she was asked to bookend the event with an opening introduction and welcome and concluding prayers. It's like a little bit of formality, and actually people quite like that. There are occasions when people want a little bit of formality and structure around particularly a public occasion. If it's all a bit too free and easy and loose, people don't really know what's going on. And there may also be occasions when, as a chaplain to a school, you need to help them to produce something that enables them to deal with either a celebration or a tragedy. And as a chaplain, you may well be called upon to help out when something like that happens. Not many people working in schools or colleges have the time or the resources or the background to be able to do that sort of thing. You are that person. So liturgical may not be such a bad thing. Prophetic. Sometimes there's a role for speaking into the life of a school or college. So, for example, again, the sixth form college where one of my colleagues works, she went to the Equality and Diversity Committee and helped them to work through how they were missing their targets for diversity in terms of what they provided, how they provided for students of other faiths. And she also did some work with them on one or two other minority groups that were in their policy, but the college had sort of somehow missed out. And so she was able to be there to help them to fulfill their requirements, should we say, of equality and diversity. But actually, all equality and diversity is about is that God made everyone equal. And we're called to uphold that value. So there are ways of, and it's a help to a school or a college to have people who kind of have that mindset that can be thinking about that stuff, as well as the people whose professional job and task it is to do that. It brings kind of a different perspective and some different skills into that. So sometimes you could be prophetic. Sometimes it could be about speaking out about things that are plainly wrong. That can be difficult. But you could be the person through whom God can speak sensitively, appropriately into the right people about issues that are of concern within the school or beyond it. And finally, the educational. This picture just to prove that I do actually do things in front of young people in schools. And again, we get what educational is. Church is an educational institution. Most of you probably yesterday morning or evening had to listen to somebody teaching you something. We understand that. Educational, it's what schools do. Great, we've got a real match here about what we can offer and what schools are looking for. And again, what we're bringing is not just being a sort of peripatetic RE resource that they can wing in when they've got a difficult subject. Oh, who can we get to do the abortion talk? I know, the Christians. That can happen. But about bringing something that, as a chaplain, is representing people of faith, the Christian faith. So that could be, we run several things. So a prayer space, for example, is educational input. It probably ticks several of those other categories as well. But it's educational input. It's educating young people about the experience of prayer, why people pray. It's I describe it when I'm setting one up. I say, this is like a laboratory. This is a place where you can experiment with what prayer is like for people who pray. And so at the end, we ask them to evaluate what they thought about prayer, whether it's changed their ideas about what prayer is. So you can be educational in what you're doing. Now, the difference that chaplaincy brings for us, as I said, in the 20 years of doing schools work in Colchester, this has been the most exciting thing that has happened. I hope you're excited by it, because if you think this isn't very exciting, that means I've had a pretty dull time in Colchester. But chaplaincy, I think, is the most exciting opportunity we've had in schools. And here's why. Because it creates a transformed relationship. We've had interviews with a couple of people so far today that have talked about the relationship with school, the depth of relationship, out of which they were able to deliver other things like prayer spaces to schools in supporting them. This is Martin Atkins. You've probably read that now, me chattering on. Chaplains are missionaries, the human face of Christ, the church that has left the building. Yeah? The church has left the building and it's now in another place, which is the school or the college. And as a chaplain, you are the face of the church. You are the face of the Christian faith in that place. Amy, who's going to be speaking later, is also from Colchester. And when her role in one school changed from being the mentor to being the chaplain, and the second week in of it being clear that she was a chaplain, the scary atheist teacher, who even the other teachers were scared of, came up to her and said, I've got to do an assembly next week, and can you help me find a Bible verse that will go with this theme I'm doing? Suddenly, bearing the label Christian in an official kind of capacity, suddenly makes it okay for people to talk to you. That's on that sort of level. It gives them an excuse to talk to you. So your relationship with the school is changed. We describe it like this. It's changed from being visitors to belonging. You now belong. You become part of the school or college. You become part of the staff. You're welcomed as belonging there. Instead of handing in your visitor's badge as you leave, you have a badge that you wear every time you're there, because you're now part of what's going on. So how can Prayer Spaces and chaplaincy help each other? Well, if you've got chaplaincy, then it can help to inform your prayer spaces. Here we did, Catherine, our chaplain in the Sixth Form College, was through after her year of working in the college, she'd identified some themes and trends among the young people that she felt needed to be addressed in the prayer space. So rather than bringing in the prayer space that we normally do, we started from scratch and said, what do we need to do here that would help young people to engage with the issues that you've identified, but help them to develop personally, pastorally, but also spiritually. And we looked at this theme about, it's not about what you're doing, but it's about who you're becoming that is important. And so as a teaser for the couple of weeks before, we put these posters up around the college. What do you need for life? Take one. And we had a whole list of little strips of things on there about good values and strong friendships and things like that. And interestingly, they were going. People were taking them. So much so, we were knocking these things. We were back at the office knocking these things out kind of every day. We're like, oh, there's some more have gone. We've got to write some, draw some more up and take them in. Creating a hunger, but also connecting with a hunger that was already there. We knew that hunger was already there. And we went on to do a prayer space that engaged young people in a whole range of activities that connected with this thing about, it's not so much what you're doing, because they were under a lot of pressure to get good exam results and they were worrying about getting a job, but they were also worrying about getting a mortgage and a pension. That's not the sort of thing you should be worrying about at 16 and 17, getting a pension. But those were the stresses in young people's lives, and they were having to try and do A-levels as well. So we did something that addressed that, helped them focus on who they are becoming. What kind of person do you want to be? When you're 30, whatever has happened, job-wise, career-wise, relationship-wise, whatever, what kind of person do you want to be when you're 30? Because you can start that now. And so I did all sorts of activities. This was one that was about, when I was younger, I wanted to be, ... Now, I want to be, ... One of the ones I loved was, when I was younger, I wanted to be a footballer. Now, I want to be an inspiration. I kind of got it. So, that's if you've got chaplaincy and prayer spaces. If you're already doing prayer spaces, how can that feed into chaplaincy? Well, in fact, our chaplaincy at the Sixth Form College flowed out of a conversation that I had with the assistant principal after we'd done our first prayer space there. So we'd identified that there were pastoral issues that weren't being met by the college in any other way. So it was a tricky conversation because I was kind of saying, you're failing at this. But I wasn't. I was saying, we can help you with this. And she said, if you can provide that, we'll have it. Just like that. So we've been doing chaplaincy there for over 4 years now. So prayer spaces can pave the way for chaplaincy. You've built a good relationship with the school or college. You've done a prayer space. Chaplaincy could be the next thing. It doesn't have to be, but it could be the next thing. Chaplaincy enables an ongoing response to the prayer space week and to the issues that emerge. So again, Amy we were doing a prayer space in a school where Amy is a chaplain, and there was a girl who'd come and chatted to her about a range of issues, and at the end of the conversation she said, but you're only here for this week, because the prayer space is only there for this week. And Amy was able to say to her, no, I'm here next week as well, and the week after. And if you want to come and see me and chat some more about this, I'll see you on Wednesday. And that was a real help to that girl. She'd found somebody that she could connect with just to talk through what was going on in her life. And this stuff had come to the fore in the prayer space, and now she was able to process it with somebody that she trusted. So chaplaincy can follow on what you're doing in your prayer space. So it's not just a here today, gone tomorrow. And then chaplaincy allows you to do other things as well. Being there gives you an entry into the life of the school that allows you to theologically reflect on what's happening in the school and to help them in spiritual development in all sorts of ways that they may not have spotted because they haven't got somebody who is thinking spiritual development like you are and doesn't have the experience and the background in spiritual development that you have as a Christian. So there are all sorts of things you could do. This is a remembrance project where we invite young people around Remembrance Day to write the name of a loved one on a piece of fabric and pin it to a banner. Incredibly helpful. It sounds really morbid, but people say how helpful this is, how thankful they are for doing this. And most places where we've done this in several schools in the college a number of years now, they want the thing left up because they say, this is really important that we remember. Please can we leave it up for another week? And in fact, in one school, they left it up for the whole of the following 2 terms and people continue to use it through those 2 terms as well. We did a project called Art is Spiritual. Art is spiritual. But here we had a bunch of young people doing their art project, and they wanted to think about this. The college wanted them to think about art as being spiritual. And so over again, a couple of terms, we worked with them on a number of ways, and in the end they produced these different pieces. This is one of them. This is a girl who'd been thinking about us as spiritual. These are not Christians we're working with here, but us as being spiritual beings. And she created a sculpture of the figure being held, and you'll notice that the head and the heart are in gold, and the rest of the body is in silver, because she said the head and the heart, what's important, and we're held by an invisible thread that is the spiritual connection. It totally wiped me out when I first saw that. Isn't that amazing? And she processed all that. Now, is the Remembrance Project a prayer space? Has some similarities, doesn't it? You could actually do that as part of a prayer space. Is this a prayer space? I'm not sure it is. This is a heart, because Connie said the heart, a vessel for life, is symbolic of the spiritual, emotional, moral, and intellectual core of a human being. She hadn't read the SMSC guidance, I don't think, but she's. My choice of the heart stems from the characteristic association we draw when we think of spirituality, the heart being a source of inspiration rather than the mind and what we see. Great stuff, Connie. Is it a prayer space? I don't know. I'm not sure it really is. But do you know what? I think it does what a prayer space does, but in a different place, within the life of the school or college. And that's what chaplaincy can do. It can bring that bring that spiritual development and pastoral support and all those other things into the whole of the life of a school, working with the school, not just flying in and flying out, belonging there and being, if you like, a theological head on the shoulders of somebody who can be the representative of the church, but also who can help young people to develop spiritually as they are expected to do. I want to end with this quote from a member of staff, from a head teacher in the school in Colchester. She said, "It's important that we offer students opportunities to reflect upon the spiritual dimensions of life. In our position as a non-denominational school," this is a state secondary, "it's not always easy to do this, and we feel it is important we do it well. We also face the usual constraints of having the time and expertise to deliver a high-quality experience for our students. The prayer space provides an enjoyable and exceptionally effective pause for thought in the midst of a busy year, an opportunity we would find it difficult to give our students without your support. The ultimate testimony can be seen in the depth of the responses of our students to the project. Their insightful comments reveal the importance of this sort of experience." That's why we do prayer spaces, and that's why we do chaplaincy. And the two are entirely complementary. I'll leave you with this thought. I don't know, is that? I was just checking that one of our team doesn't recognise that. So that was left in one of the prayer spaces we did at the Sixth Form College. I feel safe here. I want people to find the same refuge in this place as I have. I know that God hears the prayers of people. I pray that they may know that too.